The rain-slicked streets of Manhattan blurred past the taxi window, but my heart was racing faster than the city itself. I was trapped 30 days, 6 cities, and one unbearable truth. I was in love with my boss, Ethan Caldwell, and this business trip was about to break me. Every glance at his sharp jawline in the seat beside me felt like a punch to the chest, and I wasn't sure how much longer I could hide it. My name is Lucas Harper, 26, a junior analyst at Caldwell Enterprises, a rising star in New York's cutthroat finance world. I'd spent 2 years under Ethan's command, memorizing the way his green eyes lit up when he cracked a deal or how his rare smiles could unravel me in seconds. But Ethan was untouchably a 34-year-old CEO, fiercely private and straight, as far as anyone knew. I'd buried my feelings deep, convinced they'd never see daylight. Then came the email, "You're joining me on the nationwide investor tour. Pack for a month." Now, here we were, day 1, stuck in a cab weaving through midtown traffic toward our first hotel. Ethan was scrolling through his phone, his brow furrowed, oblivious to the storm inside me. "Lucas, you ready for this?" he asked, not looking up. His voice, low and steady, sent a shiver down my spine. What does it mean to be ready when your heart is screaming something your head knows you can't have? I forced a smile, my voice steady despite the chaos within. "Born ready, sir." But my mind was already spiraling. How do I survive a month of this? The hotel lobby was a glittering maze of marble and chandeliers, a stark contrast to the knot in my stomach. Ethan checked us in, his charm disarming the receptionist as he secured 2 adjacent suites. "Easier to work late," he said, tossing me a keycard. Our fingers brushed, and I swear the air crackled. I muttered a thanks and turned away, cursing myself for reading into it. That night, our first meeting loomed a high-stakes dinner with investors at a rooftop restaurant overlooking the Hudson. I stood in my suite, adjusting my tie in the mirror, trying to focus on numbers and not the way Ethan's tailored suit hugged his frame earlier. "Get it together, Lucas." But when he knocked on my door, looking like he'd stepped out of a magazine, my resolve cracked a little more. "Ready to impress?" he asked, his smile teasing but warm. I nodded, swallowing hard. The elevator ride down was silent, but his cologne cedar and something sharp filled the space, making it impossible to breathe normally. What's it like to want someone so much it hurts? I wondered, stealing a glance at him. His eyes met mine for a split second, and I looked away, terrified he'd see too much. The dinner was a blur of handshakes and spreadsheets, Ethan commanding the room with ease. I played my part, presenting projections with a confidence I didn't feel. The investors were impressed, but all I could think about was Ethan's quiet, "Good job," as we left, his hand briefly on my shoulder. It burned through my jacket, a fleeting touch I'd replay for hours. Back in my room, I collapsed onto the bed, staring at the ceiling. 29 days to go. How do you keep a secret this big when you're sharing every moment with the one person it's about? I didn't have an answer, but the ache in my chest told me this trip was only the beginning. The next morning, Ethan was already in the hotel's cafe, sipping coffee and reviewing notes. "Morning, Lucas," he said, barely looking up. "We're pitching in Boston tomorrow. You're leading the opener." My stomach dropped. Leading a pitch. I was good, but Ethan's trust in me felt like both a gift and a test. What does it mean when someone believes in you more than you believe in yourself? We spent the day prepping, our laptops side by side in his suite. His focus was relentless, but every now and then, he'd lean closer to point at my screen, his arm brushing mine. Each time, my heart stuttered, and I'd mumble something incoherent, hoping he didn't notice. But did he? His eyes lingered a moment too long once. Or maybe I imagined it. By evening, we were exhausted but ready. Ethan suggested a drink at the hotel bar to decompress. I hesitated. Alcohol and feelings don't mix well, but agreed. The bar was dimly lit, jazz humming softly. Ethan ordered whiskey. I stuck to soda, too afraid of what I might say if my guard slipped. "You're doing great, Lucas," he said, swirling his glass. "You've got a fire in you. Not everyone does." His words hit harder than they should have. What do you do when a compliment feels like a confession? I thanked him, my voice tight, and changed the subject to tomorrow's pitch. But his gaze stayed on me, steady and unreadable, and I wondered if he saw more than I wanted him to. As we walked back to our rooms, the hallway felt too small, the air too thick. "Get some rest," Ethan said at my door, his voice softer than usual. "Big day tomorrow." I nodded, but as his door clicked shut, I leaned against the wall, heart pounding. How do you stop wanting what you can't have? I didn't sleep that night. The question haunted me, and Boston was waiting. Boston's skyline glittered through the conference room window, but my focus was on the investors staring me down. Ethan's words from last night, "You got a fire in you," echoed in my head, pushing me through the pitch. I nailed it, numbers flowing like poetry, and when the lead investor nodded approval, I felt a rush I hadn't expected. But Ethan's proud glance from across the room, that was the real victory. What does it mean when someone's belief in you feels like the only thing keeping you steady? We celebrated with the team over dinner, Ethan at the head of the table, his charisma pulling everyone in. I sat quietly, watching him laugh, his tie loosened, a rare glimpse of the man behind the CEO. My chest ached with the weight of what I couldn't say. How do you sit so close to someone and feel 1,000 miles away? Later, back at the hotel, Ethan suggested a walk along the Charles River. "Clear our heads before Chicago," he said. I agreed, even though every moment alone with him was a tightrope walk. The night air was crisp, the city lights dancing on the water. We talked about work at first, but then he asked about Mimi family, my dreams. I froze. Nobody, not even Ethan, knew I'd grown up in a small Ohio town, hiding who I was from everyone, including myself. My parents weren't big on dreams, I said carefully. They wanted me to stay, work the family store. I left anyway. Ethan nodded, his eyes softening. That takes guts, Lucas. Leaving everything behind. His voice was low, like he understood more than I'd said. What does it feel like to be seen, even just a little, by the one person you're hiding from? He shared a piece of himself, then how he'd fought to build Caldwell Enterprises after his father's company collapsed, how he'd sworn never to let anyone down again. His vulnerability caught me off guard, and I wanted to reach out, to tell him he wasn't alone. But I didn't. I couldn't. The next day, we flew to Chicago. The planes hum a backdrop to my racing thoughts. Ethan was reading reports, his brow furrowed, but he'd glance over occasionally, like he was checking on me. Was he? I told myself it was nothing, but my heart wasn't listening. In Chicago, the stakes were higher, a room full of skeptical venture capitalists. Ethan took the lead this time, his presence commanding, but he deferred to me on key points, his trust like a spotlight. I delivered, but during a break, one investor, a sharp-eyed woman named Claire, pulled me aside. "You and Ethan make a good team," she said, her tone probing. "He relies on you more than you think." My face burned. What do you do when someone sees through you, even if they don't know the whole truth? That night, Ethan insisted on dinner, just the two of us, at a quiet Italian place in the Loop. "You've earned it," he said, clinking his wine glass against mine. The candlelight made his eyes glow, and I was drowning in them. He talked about the company's future, his dreams for it, but all I could think was, what if I told you? What if I said I'm falling for you? The thought was reckless, dangerous. I pushed it down. But later, as we walked back to the hotel, his shoulder brushed mine, and I stumbled. He caught my arm, steadying me, his grip firm but gentle. "Careful, Lucas," he said, his voice low, his hand lingering a moment too long. My heart stopped. What does it mean when a touch feels like a promise? Back in my room, I paced, replaying every second. His laugh, his trust, his touch. It was too much. I was losing the fight, and we still had weeks to go. How do you keep going when every step pulls you closer to the edge? The next morning, Ethan was all business, but there was a new warmth in his smile, like something had shifted. Or maybe I was imagining it, desperate for a sign. We boarded a flight to San Francisco, and as the plane climbed, I stared out the window, my reflection a ghost against the clouds. What happens when you can't outrun your own heart? San Francisco's fog wrapped the city like a secret, and I felt like I was carrying one too heavy to hold. Ethan and I were a seamless team now, our pitches sharper with every meeting. But the space between us was shrinking, and I was terrified of what that meant. Every shared glance, every casual touch, felt like a step toward a truth I wasn't ready to face. What do you do when the line between professional and personal blurs beyond recognition? Our hotel overlooked the Golden Gate Bridge, its red arches barely visible through the mist. Ethan suggested a walk after our first meeting, claiming we needed a break. We wandered through Fisherman's Wharf, the salty air mingling with the chaos in my head. He bought us coffee, and when our fingers brushed passing the cup, I nearly dropped it. How do you pretend everything's fine when your whole body is screaming? He talked about growing up in California, how the ocean always felt like home. What about you, Lucas? What's your escape? His question was simple, but it pierced me. My escape. It's you. And that's the problem. I mumbled something about books, and he laughed, soft and warm. You're full of surprises, he said, and I wondered if he knew how much I was hiding. The next day's pitch was brutal tech investors tearing into our projections. Ethan stayed calm, but I saw the tension in his jaw. When it was my turn, I pushed back, defending our numbers with a fire I didn't know I had. Ethan's eyes locked on mine. A flicker of pride. Maybe something more. What does it feel like to fight for someone else's dream and realize it's become your own? After, he pulled me aside. You were incredible in there, he said, his voice low, intense. We were alone in a hallway. Too close. The air electric. I wanted to tell him everything, how he was the reason I pushed so hard, how I was falling apart inside. But I just nodded, my throat tight. He clapped my shoulder, and I swear his hand lingered, like he was searching for something too. That night, San Francisco's nightlife called, and Ethan insisted we go out. You need to live a little, Lucas, he teased. We ended up at a rooftop bar, the city sprawling below us. He was different here, looser, his guard down, laughing over stories of his college days. I let myself relax, just for a moment, but when he leaned in to clink glasses, his knee brushed mine under the table. My breath caught. What do you do when a moment feels like it could change everything? We stayed too long, the drinks blurring the edges of my control. As we walked back, the streets quiet. Ethan slowed, his voice soft. You're not like anyone I've worked with, Lucas. You get me. My heart stopped. Was he saying what I thought? I opened my mouth, but no words came. He looked at me, his eyes searching, and I panicked, muttering good night before fleeing to my room. Alone, I sat on the edge of my bed, head in my hands. How do you keep pretending when every moment feels like a confession? I was unraveling, and we were only halfway through the trip. The next morning, Ethan acted like nothing had happened, but there was a new weight in his glances. like he was holding something back too. We flew to Seattle. The plane's hum drowning out my thoughts. What happens when two people are keeping secrets from each other? In Seattle, the meetings were relentless, but Ethan's trust in me grew. He leaned on me more, asking for my input, his smiles more frequent. During a late-night prep session, he caught me staring. "Something on your mind, Lucas?" he asked, his tone gentle but probing. My heart raced. What do you say when the truth is too dangerous to speak? I deflected, but the question lingered, heavy as the rain outside. Seattle's gray skies mirrored my mood, and as the days blurred, I felt the fight slipping away. I was losing my heart. To him. To the impossible hope that maybe, just maybe, he felt something too. Seattle's rain drummed against the hotel windows, a steady rhythm that matched the pounding in my chest. Ethan and I were deep into our fifth city, and the lines between us were fraying. Every shared coffee, every late-night strategy session, felt like a step closer to a truth I wasn't sure I could handle. What happens when you're so close to someone you love that every moment feels like a confession waiting to spill? Our Seattle pitch was a triumph. Ethan's vision for the company landing like a spark in a room full of investors. I backed him up. My numbers tight. My delivery sharper than ever. Afterward, he pulled me into a quick, fierce hug professional, but it set my skin on fire. "We're unstoppable, Lucas," he said, his grin wide. "How do you smile back when your heart is screaming something you can't say?" That night, he suggested a low-key dinner at a diner near Pike Place Market. Just us. No investors. No pretense. The neon sign buzzed outside, and inside, the smell of burgers and coffee grounded me. Ethan was relaxed, his jacket off, sleeves rolled up, talking about music, of all things. He loved jazz, he said, because it felt like life messy but beautiful. I laughed, surprised, and for a moment, we were just two guys, not boss and employee. What does it mean when the walls you've built start to crumble? I let slip that I played guitar in college, a detail I'd never shared. His eyes lit up. "You're holding out on me, Harper," he teased, leaning closer. Our knees brushed under the table, and I froze, the air thick with something unspoken. He didn't pull away. Was it nothing? Or was it everything? Back at the hotel, we lingered in the hallway, neither of us ready to end the night. "You're good for me, Lucas," he said softly, his eyes locked on mine. My breath hitched. What do you do when the person you love says something that could mean anything or everything? I mumbled a good night and fled, my heart a mess of hope and fear. The next day, we flew to Denver, the final stop before heading back east. The plane was turbulent, mirroring my thoughts. Ethan was quiet, focused, but his glances felt heavier, like he was wrestling with something too. What does it feel like to want someone to see you, but be terrified they will? In Denver, the meetings were intense, but we were in sync, finishing each other's sentences. During a break, I caught Ethan watching me, his expression unreadable. "You okay?" he asked, stepping closer. His voice was low, concerned, and it broke something in me. I nodded, but my eyes betrayed me, lingering too long. How do you hide a truth that's written all over your face? That night, Denver's skyline glowed outside our hotel bar. Ethan ordered us drinks, his mood lighter but still charged. To surviving this trip, he toasted, his eyes on me. I clinked my glass, my hand shaking slightly. We talked late, the conversation drifting to personal dreams, fears. He admitted he was afraid of failing the company, of letting people down. I wanted to tell him he could never fail me, but the words stuck. What do you do when silence feels louder than words? As we walked back to our rooms, the hallway was quiet. the tension between us palpable. At my door, he paused, his hand on the frame, so close I could feel his warmth. "Lucas," he started, then stopped, his eyes searching mine. My heart pounded. Was this it? But he just said, "Sleep well," and walked away. I stood there, frozen, the ache in my chest unbearable. Alone in my room, I sank to the floor. How do you keep going when every moment pushes you closer to a truth you're not ready to face? Denver was our last stop, but the real journey was just beginning. Denver's thin air did nothing to ease the weight in my chest. We were nearing the end of the trip, but every moment with Ethan felt like a countdown to something I couldn't predict or control. I was losing the fight with my heart, and the question loomed larger every day. What happens when you love someone so much it's tearing you apart? Our final Denver pitch was flawless, the room erupting in applause. Ethan's hand found my shoulder, his grip warm, his smile electric. "We did it, Lucas," he said, his voice low, "meant just for me." The words hit like a spark, but his touch lingered, and I wondered if he felt it too. How do you tell the difference between hope and delusion? We celebrated with the team at a rooftop bar, the Rockies glowing under the sunset. Ethan was magnetic, pulling everyone into his orbit, but his eyes kept finding mine. Each glance was a question I didn't know how to answer. Later, as the group thinned, he leaned close, his voice teasing. "You're quiet tonight, Harper. What's going on in that head of yours? What do you say when the truth could ruin everything?" I deflected with a laugh, but my heart was racing. We walked back to the hotel, the night air cool, the streets quiet. He slowed, his shoulder brushing mine, and I felt the world tilt. "You've been different this trip," he said suddenly, his tone serious. "Something's up. Talk to me." My stomach dropped. How do you hide a secret when it's written in every look, every word? "I'm fine," I lied, my voice barely steady. His eyes narrowed, like he didn't believe me, but he didn't push. Instead, he reached out, adjusting my scarf against the cold. His fingers grazed my neck, and I stopped breathing. What does it mean when a touch feels like it could break you open? The next morning, we flew back to New York for the final meetings. The city felt different now, like it held all my secrets. Ethan was quieter too, his usual confidence tinged with something I couldn't place. During our last pitch, I caught him staring, not at the investors, but at me. My heart pounded. Was he seeing me? Really seeing me? After, we were alone in the conference room, packing up. "You've been incredible, Lucas," he said, his voice soft. "I don't know what I'd do without you." The words were simple, but they hit like a confession. I froze, my hands trembling as I zipped my bag. What do you do when the person you love says something that could mean everything and nothing? That night, he suggested one last dinner, just us, at a quiet spot in the village. The restaurant was warm, intimate, the kind of place where secrets could slip. We talked about the trip, the deals we'd closed, but the air was heavy with what we weren't saying. His foot brushed mine under the table, and this time, he didn't move away. My heart stopped. What happens when you can't tell if it's an accident or a choice? As we left, the city buzzed around us, but all I could feel was his presence, his warmth. We stopped at a crosswalk, and he turned to me, his eyes intense. "Lucas, I need to tell you something," he started, but his phone buzzed, shattering the moment. He cursed, glancing at Ida board member with last-minute demands. Why does the universe always interrupt the truth? Back at the hotel, I lay awake, replaying his words, his touch. The trip was ending, but the real question remained. What do you do when you're so close to the edge? You can't help but jump. New York's lights burned bright outside my hotel window. But inside, I was drowning. The trip was almost over, and I was no closer to knowing where I stood with Ethan or if I could survive telling him the truth. Every moment with him felt like a step toward a cliff, and I was running out of ground. What do you do when the person you love is so close, yet so impossibly far? Our final day was a whirlwind meetings, handshakes, and Ethan's voice guiding us through it all. I watched him, memorizing every detail, the way he tilted his head when he listened, the quiet strength in his hands. I was falling harder, and it was tearing me apart. How do you hold on to a secret that's breaking you? After the last meeting, Ethan suggested a walk through Central Park. One last breather before we're back to reality, he said, his smile softer than usual. The park was quiet, the leaves crunching under our feet, the air crisp with autumn. We talked about nothing: movies, coffee, the city, but every word felt heavy, like we were dancing around something bigger. He stopped by a fountain, his hands in his pockets, his eyes distant. This trip, it's been different, hasn't it? He said, his voice low. My heart raced. What does different mean when you're terrified of the answer? I nodded, unable to speak, afraid of what might spill out. He turned to me, his gaze intense. Lucas, you've been more than just a colleague. You know that, right? My breath caught. Was this it? But before I could respond, a jogger bumped into us, breaking the moment. Ethan laughed it off, but I saw the flicker of frustration in his eyes. Why does the truth always slip away? That night, he insisted on one last drink at a bar near the hotel. The place was cozy, all dark wood and soft lights. We sat in a corner, the world fading around us. He was quieter now, his usual confidence replaced by something raw. I've been thinking, he said, staring into his glass. About what matters. About who matters. My heart stopped. What do you say when the moment you've been waiting for feels like a trap? I leaned forward, my voice barely a whisper. Ethan, what are you saying? He looked at me, his eyes searching, and for a second, I thought he'd say it's whatever it was. But he shook his head, a small smile breaking the tension. Just, you're important, Lucas. That's all. Was it all? We walked back in silence, the city humming around us. At my door, he paused, his hand brushing mine. Good night, Lucas, he said, but his voice was thick, like he was holding something back. I watched him walk away, my heart screaming to call him back. How do you let someone go when they're already part of you? Alone, I collapsed onto my bed, the weight of the past month crushing me. The trip was ending, but the real journey was just beginning. What happens when you're so in love you can't see straight? I didn't know, but I was about to find out. The final morning in New York dawned too bright, too fast. The trip was over, but the war inside me raged on. I'd spent a month hiding my love for Ethan, and now, with our return to normal life looming, I was out of time. What do you do when the end of something feels like the end of you? We packed in silence, our suites side by side, the air heavy with unspoken words. Ethan was quieter than usual, his movements deliberate, like he was holding something back. At breakfast, he barely touched his coffee, his eyes flicking to me and away. Ready to go home? He asked, his voice neutral but his gaze intense. How do you answer when home feels like the person sitting across from you? I nodded, my throat tight. The drive to the airport was a blur, Manhattan fading behind us. On the plane, Ethan sat beside me, his arm brushing mine on the armrest. Every touch was a reminder of what I couldn't have. How do you say goodbye to a dream you've lived for a month? Back at the office, the familiar hum of phones and keyboards felt wrong, like I'd left part of myself on the road. Ethan was all business, but his glances lingered, and I caught him watching me when he thought I wasn't looking. What does it mean when someone's eyes say more than their words? That evening, he called me into his office. The room was dark, the city skyline glowing through the window. "Lucas, I need to talk to you," he said, his voice low, serious. My heart pounded. Was this the moment? He paced, then stopped, his eyes locking on mine. This trip, it changed things. For me. My breath caught. What do you do when the person you love starts to open the door you've been afraid to knock on? Changed how? I asked, my voice barely audible. He stepped closer, his expression torn. "I've been trying to figure it out," he said. You're not just an employee. Not to me." The air was electric, the space between us shrinking. I wanted to tell him everything, how I'd loved him for years, how this trip had broken me open. But fear stopped me. What if I'm wrong? Before I could speak, his phone rang, a board member. Again. He cursed, answering it, and the moment shattered. I left his office, my heart in pieces. That night, I walked the city alone, the weight of my silence crushing me. How do you live with a love you're too afraid to claim? I didn't know, but I couldn't keep running. The New York skyline glittered, but it couldn't light the darkness inside me. I'd spent a month falling deeper for Ethan, and now, back in the real world, I was out of excuses. I had to tell Heimer, let him go. What do you do when the truth is the only thing left, but it could cost you everything? The next day, I found Ethan in his office, staring out at the city. He looked tired, vulnerable, not the untouchable CEO I'd idolized. "Lucas," he said, turning, his voice soft. "I owe you an apology. I've been distant. My heart raced. What does it mean when someone sees their own walls? No apology needed, I said, my voice steady despite the storm inside. But I need to say something. The words were out before I could stop them. How do you start a confession when you're terrified of the ending? I took a breath. Ethan, this trip, it showed me who I am. And who I love. His eyes widened, but he didn't move. I pushed on, my voice shaking. It's you. It's been you for years. I know you might not feel the same, but I can't keep this inside anymore. The silence was deafening, my heart exposed. Raw. What do you do when you've bared your soul and the world holds its breath? Ethan stepped closer, his expression unreadable. Lucas, he said, his voice thick. I've been fighting this too. My heart stopped. Fighting what? He ran a hand through his hair, his eyes locked on mine. I didn't know how to say it. I've never done this. But you re everything. Time slowed. He closed the distance, his hand finding mine, his touch grounding me. I'm scared, he admitted, his voice barely a whisper. But I'm more scared of losing you. What does it feel like to hear the words you've dreamed of? It felt like flying. We stood there, hands clasped, the city humming below. He leaned in, his forehead against mine, and for the first time, I let myself believe. The kiss that followed was tentative, then fierce, like we'd both been holding our breath for too long. How do you hold on to a moment you never thought you'd have? Days later, we were navigating something new, something fragile but real. Ethan was still my boss, but he was also more my partner, my truth. The office buzzed with rumors, but we faced them together, hand in hand. What does it mean to love bravely? It means choosing each other, no matter the cost. The trip had trapped me, but it also set me free. I'd fought my heart and lost, and I'd never been more grateful.